We're back. I mean, literally back, Brian Peterson, because the UCF Knights, for the first time since checked notes 2022, have won a game in October. Adam Eaton, Brian Peterson with you on this edition of Sons today. Brian, the Knights finally back on the win side of the column, if you will, 45-13 over West Virginia. First Big 12 win this season. First Big 12 win since November 2nd, 2024. First October win since October 29th, 2022 against Cincinnati. It's been a long time, but we're here, Brian. What are your thoughts? What do you think about the game? UCF, a pretty handy victory, I guess. I don't think it was ever really in doubt over West Virginia.
No, I don't think so. But as we start the show, I've got a question for you, Adam. Are we a good team? Because I keep going back and forth on that.
We're a good team when the right team is across the line of scrimmage from us.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yes, we need the right team over there. It's like
on paper,
you're a good dancer if the rest of the people in the crowd can't dance.
Right.
But if you're like hanging out with like Dancing with the Stars, then you're not a good dancer anymore. So I think that's kind of where UCF's at. Like if you're in a room of people with like two left feet, man, you just look like the best dancer ever. But if you're like with a bunch of pros, you're like, this guy over here can't really dance very well.
I also have two left feet, so I'm not sure that that's accurate. But
fair enough.
I mean, we had a good time yesterday, right? I mean, the Knights put on quite a show against a Mountaineers team that is more beat up than we are, I think, which is tough in today's age of college football because we're pretty beat up as it is. Of course, we're getting that bye. So hopefully the team gets to enjoy this win and gets a little bit healthier in the bye week coming up. But it was an all-around team victory, I thought, for the Knights on Saturday for homecoming. Put on a good show, put up plenty of points on offense. The defense got involved. They scored some points. We had a 51-yard field goal from Noe Ruella. So special teams, defense, and offense all getting points on the board. It was a pretty great afternoon.
Yeah, it was a good homecoming weekend. Obviously, we saw some legends go in the Hall of Fame on Friday. Spirit Splash was Friday. That's always fun to watch, even though obviously you and I weren't there. But watching all the kids run in there and fall and trip, and God knows how much bodily fluids have gotten into the pond after that, Brian. Everybody has a good time, and then you go to the game. Weather was hot, by the way. It was hot. But weather held up. No rain for the first time ever. And here's the problem though. Like you and I were talking close to halftime. I think I looked up at the scoreboard, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 250 yards to UCF, 83 to West Virginia, and it felt like we had dominated. And I looked up, and it was 14-7.
Yeah,
and I was kind of like, man, I don't love where we're at here. And then West Virginia, fake punt with Brian Peterson. I will tell everybody right now, Brian Peterson saw that fake punt coming from a block and a half away. He was yelling, "Watch out for the fake!" Sure
I don't
enough,
think
West
Scott
Virginia
Frost heard me. I need to yell louder next time.
No, next time let's get you louder there.
The folks next to us heard me though.
A lot of people heard you up in the cabana. And then luckily they missed a field goal, Brian. But when it was 14-7 and a half, I was kind of like, man, are we going to do this again? Are we going to do that Kansas thing where it looks like we're playing well? We appear to be dominating on the field and the stats say we're dominating, but the scoreboard doesn't. Are we going to do that thing again? And so at halftime, I was super cranky because I was like, man, I do not want to do this again. Luckily, they come out third quarter and they obviously they get an offensive touchdown, a defensive touchdown. And it felt like the game was out of reach after that, Brian. But that first half, UCF played well, but, they did the things that they always have seemed to have done this season, which is, is this a new way to shoot ourselves in the foot? Let's try this. And 2 4th down conversions aren't made. And all of a sudden, you were kind of like, why is West Virginia still in this game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to what I asked you, I couldn't tell. I mean, leading up to this game, I was nervous, right? We have not performed well in the last 3 games. We've dropped 3 in a row now. And on paper, we should be a better team than West Virginia. We knew that coming into this game. Rich Rod is in a similar situation to Scott Frost, where they're having to come in and do a complete rebuild for West Virginia. But I felt confident that we could get the win over West Virginia. I just didn't know if it was going to happen or not. And we came out firing on all cylinders. We went up 7-0. And then, as you said, in that towards the last half of that second quarter, we started to stumble on offense again. And then you look up at the scoreboard and we're only up by 1 touchdown. It was 14-7. And we seemed to be losing some steam. And you get worried at that point. Are we going to do this again? You know, that we've seen ourselves get into a situation where we're not able to hang on and the team comes from behind and we drop a game. But halftime ends, they come out in the third quarter, UCF gets the ball, and Taven Jackson and offense go to work, and we never looked back at that point. Saw a lot of good plays out of Taven. We need to stop and we need to acknowledge the wide receiving core because they are just phenomenal. They're phenomenal.
Oh, wow. You're going phenomenal on receivers?
I'm going phenomenal. Yeah. I mean,
we're getting all the way to phenomenal. We're not getting good, serviceable. We're going all the way phenomenal.
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
I love it.
On Saturday, they get a phenomenal score from me. I mean, we spread the ball around. Taven was throwing it all around. What an absolute performance by Chris Domerkant. You know, 2 fourth down touch.
Can we just pause for a second?
I know what you're going to go. Go ahead.
In your life, did you ever think you would say, what a phenomenal performance by Chris Domerkant? Did you ever think that was going to happen to you?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. I did not think that I would be talking about how well the wide receiver core has done this season after coming out of this game. But I mean, Chris Domerkant, I'm just looking at the stats here. Chris Domerkant had 5 receptions for 89 yards. He averaged almost 18 yards with 2 touchdowns. Caleb Rollerson had 2 receptions for 59 yards. Dwayne Thomas got involved. Dwayne Charles was involved. Dylan Wade was involved. Marcus Burke, Carl Jenkins Jr. I mean, DJ Black, who's kind of been a great receiver for us all season, was kind of the low point, and I don't want to take anything away from him. He played a good game. He just, on the stat side of thing, he only had 2 catches and -1 yards because screens are a thing. But
and how did he play a great game exactly with 2 catches?
You know what? He's been a good receiver for us. Okay. Give him the day off. All right.
Go DJ.
Because everybody else stepped up for him. To go. One of the things that we haven't talked about enough, Adam, is we need to give some credit to Sean Beckton. Because he has either coached these guys up or him and Frost went into the portal and found some of these guys, these diamonds in the rough that as we've talked about in the past, and this coaching staff being able to turn players into dominant players. And I think that as this season has gone along, I'm feeling more and more confident with the wide receivers. And it's not just one guy, right? We've been able to spread the ball around. And I think that was very obvious on Saturday.
Yeah, look, I think the first half drive chart to me is basically UCF's 2025 season written in stone. Touchdown, turnover on downs, punt. That feels like UCF's offense, UCF's season so far to date in 2025. And look, it's interesting. Like, this is a different team at times when I think at home especially, but you mentioned the receivers. Last week against Cincinnati, no receivers showed up. And this week, again, they're there, they're making plays, they're making catches, design of play was better. Marcus Burke had a fantastic one-handed catch over the middle of the field early in the game. You mentioned Domerkant with 2 touchdowns, who hadn't really been a huge factor in the offense. And it's so interesting because when you see what they did against West Virginia, you see what the ceiling of this offense could be. And it frustrates you as a fan because you're like, why can't I see this more often? Like, why can't we do this more consistently? Why am I going touchdown, turnover, punt? Like, why am I doing that when you see what this ceiling can be? And it looks a 180 from what we saw against Cincinnati, where we barely eked out 11 points. We should mention, though, maybe is it time, Brian, to should we just put to bed Taven Jackson is the quarterback for this team? Cam Fancher obviously had to play against Cincinnati, and obviously we know Taven perhaps wasn't healthy. Then we learned midweek from Coach Frost in the injury report only. We did not learn this verbally until post game. Cam Fancher apparently broken ribs that they quote just figured out midweek, and so Cam Fancher
probably practiced. That's what Scott Frost said.
In the TNT series that they ran prior to the game, they showed some clips of Cam in the jersey throwing. I don't know if that was live because you could tell there was some stock footage there, but this is Taven Jackson's offense. Yeah, it's like win or lose, good or bad. It just feels like the system we've seen when it's at its best has been with Taven Jackson at the helm. Whether he's a good quarterback, whether he's the right quarterback, whether he's the future quarterback, I don't have those answers right now. But this appears to be when Taven Jackson has the ball, it feels like it gives UCF the best chance to win or to be productive from an offensive standpoint.
I agree. I don't think there's any question that Taven is QB1 at this point. I mean, I think that's pretty, from the fact that he's gotten the most
Well,
starts.
you don't think that, but we won't get Frost this week because it's a bye week.
It's a
But
bye
the next
week,
time he's
you're
at the podium, he's gonna be like, you know what, guys, it really going to depend on.
You got to
practice
keep
this
these guys
week.
motivated, Adam. You got to keep these guys motivated, and you got to keep the other team guessing.
I guess so. But
I
guess
no,
you got to keep them on their toes for Davy Belfort just in case.
You know, I mean, he looked good too out there. He was running around.
Can we slow down? Can we? I saw some like.
I'm sorry, I'm
Mackenzie,
excited. We won.
He looks like Mackenzie Milton. Can we slow down? Like he looked okay. He played well. I mean, touchdown run was nice, and yes, he wears number 10, and yes, he's not the biggest cat in the world. I get it, but can we slow down with he's got a little KZ in him. Let's just. I like Davy. I hope he works out for UCF, but let's just hit a little bit of the brakes on. He's got a little KZ in him.
Going back to Taven, 23 of 34 for passing attempts, 277 yards, an average of 8.1, 2 touchdowns and a pick, a quarterback rating of 89.8. I don't remember a Taven pick in that game. When did that happen?
You may have been on a sabbatical.
I may have gone down to the.
It wasn't like a disaster. I mean, at that point, I think UCF was in a good spot. But here's the problem with Taven, though, Brian. For being honest, I'm looking at the stats really quickly, and I think I'm right on this. And let me check. I am right on this. UCF 0 sacks allowed. Mm-hmm. If you can keep Taven upright, I think you have a shot. But he took a hit at one point in the game, and you saw him go right back to that left arm again, that left shoulder, which has been problematic. And you were like, oh no, what's happening here? If you can keep Taven upright, West Virginia is credited with 0 sacks and 0 quarterback hurries. Now, it felt like there were a couple of times, at least they were near him. So I'm not sure who makes these stats. But if you can keep Taven upright and keep him healthy, I think UCF's in a good spot. But the problem is, he's left 2 games now. He hasn't finished 2 games for UCF. Didn't finish the Kansas State game. Didn't finish the Kansas game, right? So, and he didn't play Cincinnati. So if you can keep him upright, like he might be the guy. I think that's the biggest thing is if you can keep him clean, maybe he could be, and we could see what he could actually look like. What his offense could look like with Taven Jackson.
Well, I think that's why this bye week is so important, right? We've got, I mean, as we talked about before, Cam is out. I mean, he's got broken ribs, so I don't know if that means he's going to be out the rest of the season. And now we're going to have to see how Jacurri does. You know, he needs to rest up. He was questionable on the report that UCF released before the game started. Taven certainly looked better, but he said that even in the post-game presser, Taven was asked, you know, how you feeling? You know, you've had some injuries, you know, your shoulder. And he said, no, this bye week comes at a good time because the team needs to heal up. And I think that that's true. So if we can keep him healthy, I mean, that kind of goes to just about any quarterback in any team, right? If you can keep the quarterback upright, you're better off. And the offensive line, I think, did a better job this week than they have in past weeks. I don't know if that's because perhaps they are improved and they're seeing something that maybe they've made some adjustments to the offensive line that we had not seen earlier in the season, or just because West Virginia perhaps is a lesser opponent. I don't want to take anything away from them, but they're banged up. And I think we saw that on Saturday. So I don't know if that's, the offensive line playing better or West Virginia just not being as good on their defensive line, but certainly a great performance from Taven, and you hope we see more out of them, as the season progresses.
Can I ask you a conspiracy theory question here? So we are now 4-3, 7 games into the season, right? 5 games remaining for UCF on the calendar, 2 at home, 3 on the road. Obviously, you kind of know where you are in terms of you need 6 wins for a bowl game, and I'll get back to that in a second. You mentioned Jacurri Brown. Have we seen the last of Jacurri Brown in a UCF on the field for UCF? And here's my question for you: Davy Belfort has 4 years of eligibility left. Taven Jackson has, I think, 2 years of eligibility left. Jacurri Brown, Cam Fancher, out of eligibility. We're now in the second half of the season. Here's Scott Frost, and you saw Davy Belfort again. I pumped the brakes on Mackenzie Milton, but he certainly had some good plays. You saw some flashes of Davy Belfort. Do you just bump him up the depth chart and just let me see what this kid has? Because I got 4 years left with him, so I need to figure out, is he getting my plans going forward? Like, do you think we should see the last of Jacurri Brown on the field? And B, do you think we will see Scott Frost say, let me think about seeing if I can get Davy some more reps or make him QB2 as I think about the future of this Knights program and what I want to do at quarterback?
That's a fair question. I'll give you my thoughts. I don't know that I have an exact answer for you. I don't know that anybody does. I don't even know if you ask Scott Frost if you get an exact answer.
Well,
from
Brian,
him.
it's all hands on deck, Brian, this
You're
week.
gonna have to see how they
Everybody's
practice,
ready.
right?
Yeah.
So here are my thoughts. I think Ja'Cory is an absolute stud of an athlete, and I think that his playmaking ability on the field, if he's healthy, is something that you can't ignore. So going back to the Cincinnati, not the Cincinnati game, the Kansas game, where we could not punch it in from the 1 yard line. Do you think that that changes if Ja'Cory is able to play in that game and is able to go? Yeah, I think so. I think that probably Scott Frost rolls Ja'Cory out there and we're able to find a way to get 1 yard to get in the end zone if that's the case. Was that the Kansas game or was that the Cincinnati game? It's happened so many times now, I can't keep track anymore.
Kansas was from the 1. Yeah. Kansas
Yeah,
is
that was
when
from the 1.
we ran some sort of Cam Fancher off the tackle thing that went like 4 steps. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that he's such an athlete that you can't ignore him being on the team. And I think the coaching staff likes him. And I think the team likes him, right? He's been with UCF now for a few years, and I think that he's respected. He's a leader on the team. So I don't think that you necessarily go to Davi over Ja'Cory if Ja'Cory is healthy. I'll put that out there. Now, the question is where is Davi in his development? He is a true freshman. How many games? Redshirt freshman, I apologize. He's a redshirt freshman, but we don't necessarily want to burn the redshirt, right? How many games has he played? So is that
second?
That's what I think. I think it's the second game.
Well, he can't re-redshirt. He redshirted already West Virginia or at Virginia Tech for year 1. So he can't re-redshirt. So he's already used.
He had another year that he had. Okay, well then it doesn't matter.
He's already used his redshirt. Yeah, so you can't burn a redshirt. Also, by the way, true or false? Davi Belfort listed at 5'11". True or false?
Okay. False.
Again, and
I'm 5'10". I'm 5'10". Yeah. When he walked past me at Nightwalk, I was looking down.
And the kid can probably kick both of our asses with one arm tied behind his back because of his background. But again, I'm just interested to see what Frost's mentality is here, right? Do I start thinking about the future of this program? Like you saw Davi play now, you've seen him play in practice. He's been QB2, I guess, for all intents and purposes, from Cincinnati on through this week at West Virginia. So you've seen enough now to Scott say, hey, listen, you know what, like, if I'm going to have a future with this program, this kid could be a player for me. I need to figure this out versus Ja'Cory Browning. And I love Ja'Cory as well. I think I've heard behind the scenes that he has the most respect of that entire group, just the kid he is, the person that he is. And so I don't want to see him not play for UCF again. I just wonder if Scott Frost starts looking towards the future. Here's the other thing that's uncomfortable, Brian. You mentioned the offensive line looked better. And the question that we don't have an answer to just yet is, did they look better because West Virginia just wasn't ready? Or there was one change on the offensive line. Owen Spell in for the injured Paul Rubelt. And now I'm not blaming all the offensive line stuff on Paul Rubelt, but that 5. So the starting 5 was Carter Miller, Cameron Kinney, Owen Spell, Jabari Brooks, Preston Cushman. That 5 looked like they had some stuff a little bit better. Again, is that because that unit works together better? Maybe they complement each other better. I don't know. Or is West Virginia just not ready to play? To be fair, after the game, Rich Rodriguez, West Virginia's coach, said we sucked. So perhaps it's a little bit of both. But it was another interesting change, Brian, where Owen Spell comes in. You saw that O-line play just a little bit better. And so I don't know what to take from that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think we'll know that until we see how we play in the next game and see what kind of adjustments and who the coaches decide to put out there. If they roll Paul Rubelt back out there into the rotation or if they stick with Spell. I mean, Spell played a good game, I thought, in relief of Paul Rubelt. I think that in his Monday presser, Coach Frost mentioned that Paul Rubelt was on the short list of making his return. So I would expect that after the bye week upcoming that he's probably ready to go. So curious to see what they're going to do. Are they going to put him back in the rotation? Now, he is one of the team captains, so Scott Frost has mentioned that he also has a lot of respect from this team inside the locker room. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets put back into that starting role on the offensive line, and we use Spell for rotation backup. But Spell did play a great game on Saturday.
He was graded 66.8 overall on offense, according to Pro Football Focus. He was fourth of the five starting offensive linemen, if I'm reading this right. So again, that unit played okay. And again, listen, let's be honest. When Rubel's healthy, he's back in the game, right? He's UCF's ambassador. He was featured in that series that TNT did pregame. He's going to play. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I just thought it was interesting that yet another change in the O line, and it seemed to work out for UCF at least on Saturday. Here's the next uncomfortable question for you, Brian. Do we need to get Jaden Nixon more touches, or is he just a function of the teams he plays against maybe help him out? So if you're not scoring at home, Jaden Nixon 7 carries, 117 yards, 2 touchdown, averages 16 yards a carry. Another similar game to the game he had against North Carolina A&T, where he broke out for something like 30 yards a carry. Miles Montgomery, conversely, 14 carries, 91 yards, averaged 6 yards a carry. Again, not terrible, Brian, but do we need to find more ways to get Jaden Nixon the ball? Is that something UCF's got to do, or are we good just trot mile? Like, how do we handle this running back situation?
It's a good question. I really like Miles Montgomery. He was kind of in the back of my mind. He was the preseason MVP for our offense. I thought that he was going to be really good in RJ Harvey's absence. And I'm not saying that he hasn't been good. I think that he just perhaps has not lived up to the expectations that perhaps we placed on him coming into this season. And he's also working with an offensive line that's gone through a lot of adversity with the loss of Coach Sean Clark. And he's also dealing with the rebuild, right? So he's having to deal with all the problems that the offense is dealing with. Now, that being said, I do think Jaden Nixon brings something special to the team when he's on the field. We've seen the explosive plays out of Jaden Nixon where we perhaps haven't quite seen those explosive plays out of Miles Montgomery. Miles Montgomery is a workhorse. He's putting in the effort. There's just something that's special with Jaden when he's on the field. That 83-yard run basically sealed the game. If the game wasn't over at that point, that 83-yard touchdown run that Jaden Nixon certainly sealed the game for the Knights on Saturday. He's just a special player. And if we're gonna stick on the running backs, I was really happy to see Adaye come in. He's a younger guy that is getting his first reps with the team now, and he's going to be a special player, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, and I know Frost wasn't coaching this team when these guys were there, but I'd like to see Miles and Jaden kind of like that Greg McCrae and Otis Anderson style role. That again, it was the Heupel coach teams, but where McCrae was more of the guy that was getting the ball on first, second down, trying to get yards. And if you remember, for a while they moved Otis to receiver to get him more touches.
Utility.
Right? He was doing more stuff. Yes, he was the utility guy. I wonder if there's just a way for Frost to get. I'm not saying you take away from Miles, but how do you get more in Jaden infused in this offense, get him more touches? Because to your point, that's the first one of the day. When he has the ball in his hands, he can take 183. And no disrespect to Miles Montgomery, but Jaden Nixon has an extra gear of speed that I don't think many players on this team outside of like DJ Black has. So you get the ball to Jaden, he can hit that extra gear and maybe take 183 that would normally maybe go for 53 or 63 for most guys, but Jaden's got that afterburner effect. So I just wonder how you get Jaden Nixon more involved offensively, because it feels like when he's in there, he's got the ball in his hands. There more explosive things can happen than maybe any other player in this offense outside again of a DJ Black. He of 2 catches and -1 yards. So outside of that, like it feels like when the ball's like he's that guy this year so far for me, when the ball's in his hands that you kind of stop and stand up a little bit and like you're kind of looking like real quick, like what's he gonna do? Because like he just feels like he can make a cut and go.
I wonder how much of the difference between Jaden and Miles Montgomery is their vision. And I'm not a running back coach. I've never played running back. If you put me out there, I would get completely clobbered. But I don't know if Jaden sees something different, if he's got that better vision, or if it's just been the luck of the draw in the plays that he's in, or what the coaches are scheming up for when Jaden's on the field versus when Miles is on the field. But I was watching on Saturday, and I feel like Jaden moves north and south much more often than Miles does. Sure. I feel like Miles is usually trying to get around the outside because he knows perhaps cutting up the middle isn't working right now. So I feel like he was running east and west a lot on Saturday, trying to get around the edge there and make a play that way. I don't know if that's just something that I saw. Maybe I'm just making it up in my head, but I felt like he was doing a lot more east and west whereas Jaden Nixon was just kind of punching it through, finding those creases, and breaking some big plays open.
Well, to be fair to Jaden, like that run he had, I mean, I think you and I could have run through the hole that the O-line created for him, right? So perhaps it's just play calls, designs, schemes that are working out. I just think when you have a playmaker like a Jaden Nixon, and this offense has been searching for it, Scott Frost talks about it every day. We need explosive plays. We need explosive plays. Like, he's a guy who can get you explosive plays, having him on the field more times than not. And again, it doesn't have to be at the expense of Miles, but how do you get him more in the field so defense goes, hey, watch number 5 over there because he could catch this and go. And how does that open up your entire system, Brian? But so we see the offense kind of bring it together a little bit. Again, a lot of garbage time play for Davie Belfort. Brock Hansel got unwrapped from the mummy that he is in. Nice interception, by the way, Brock. But so he gets unwrapped from the mummy that he was in. He gets some run there. You mentioned Adai gets some run there. So it was cool to see the young guys get some play, Brian. But let's switch over to defense for a second. Mm-hmm. Again, I think all of us, I don't know. I need to go back and listen to myself. I talk way too much. And so I don't remember what I said anymore, but it almost feels like the Alex Grinch apology tour needs to start. I mean, this again is statistically speaking, this is a top 25 defense right now in the country. Knock on wood to your point. Second one of that. Like they played lights out actually on Saturday. I mean, again, West Virginia was starting like a bunch of different quarterbacks that weren't ready, and you could definitely tell that they weren't prepared per se. So again, they weren't exactly facing the 2019 LSU offense. I get it, sure. But again, the defense steps up, makes plays, and when you needed a momentum swing, UCF scores 21-7, and now we're like, okay, we get a little cushion, and then obviously the Kelly Lawson touchdown from the fumble recovery kind of puts us out of whack, Brian. Knight's defense, A, do we owe Alex Grinch an apology? And B, do you think we can keep this up throughout the last 5 games of the schedule?
It's only going to get harder from here, Adam. So, I mean, we have to go on the road to Baylor. We've got to go on the road to Texas Tech. We got to go to BYU. That's going to be a tough one. They won a tight game last night against Utah. But overall, you got to give credit to the defense. You expect a good defense to come out and take care of business against a lesser opponent. And I think that, no disrespect to West Virginia, like you said, their offense struggling right now, right? Their season is kind of in the dumpster, so to speak. They're rotating quarterback. They've got a lot of injuries, and our defense came out and put up 7 sacks on that West Virginia offense, right? Something that we haven't done in a long time. That was a record for UCF, 7 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. I mean, the defense was swarming. Defensive line played really well. Cole Kozlowski, again, showed himself as a great linebacker for UCF. Nigel Lee Kelly got involved. We saw John Walker out there, Damari Anderson, Lewis Carter, Malachi Lawrence. They were all over the field. And it just continues to make you feel confidence that this defense is going to, if not, break open a big play and, get that fumble recovery for a touchdown, they're at least going to keep the games competitive on their side of the ball. And I think that I'm not going to say it, not to your point. As you said,
I think that still counts. I don't know if you can do that
counts.
one.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know if you can do that.
As you said, I think that this, we owe Alex Grinch an apology. Well, maybe not everybody, because some people were excited about Alex Grinch coming to UCF, I think. But yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll say that.
Okay. All right,
I didn't have a problem with Alex Grinch. I wasn't excited about it, but he is obviously a coach that is looking to redeem himself, just like Scott Frost. And I think that probably when Scott Frost was looking for a defensive coordinator, he was looking with somebody that had a chip on their shoulder. And I think that Grinch has certainly proven that he can coach a defense. Big 12, not known for their defense, right? They're known for their offense. And I don't know if that makes it better or worse for him that he's been able to put this defense together for UCF. And we'll see how they handle some of these bigger offensive lines in BYU and Texas Tech. As we, continue to fight for bowl eligibility in the remaining games this season.
210 yards of total offense for West Virginia again on Saturday. How much of that is their futility? How much of that is UCF? I don't really know. I think that's the narrative that I saw a little bit coming out of this game, Brian, which was, all right, we won the game, but West Virginia wasn't very good. We're supposed to beat them, yada, yada, yada. And all of that is fair. I get it. But I'll go back to something Latavius Murray said early in the year when I spoke to him, which is winning is hard. Don't apologize when you do it. Yep. And we've seen UCF not win games that they probably should have won, and it felt terrible. So to get a win, obviously feels good, even though you're supposed to potentially get that win against West Virginia. I want to touch on something you just mentioned. I've seen a lot of flack too about people talking about bowl eligibility, and who cares? No big deal. I don't want to go to the Celebration Bowl anyway. Like no one's going to care. And I get all that. I'm not over here saying that I'm going to be traveling to any bowl game UCF goes to because they're in a bowl game, right? I do think, though, it's a nice goal to set for the program to say we at least want to be 500 in the first year of this Scott Frost redo. We talked last time we were on about comparing UCF to their peer group that's in the same boat that they're in, right? So far, that's West Virginia and North Carolina, two teams that UCF has beaten soundly, right? Mm-hmm. You saw what the bad end of 70-plus new players and a new coaching staff looks like in both those programs who appear to be imploding. And so it's a nice, good goal. It's a good watermark for UCF to say, hey, in the first year of this new era of Scott Frost, kind of learning stuff, to get to 6 wins, to be 500, yes, that may mean some meaningless bowl that no one really cares about. I'm not worried about that as much as can you at least set a standard to go, this is the building block, the foundation. To do that, though, Brian, 5 games left. We got to win. Essentially, we got to win 2 of those 5 games left.
Your math is correct.
You've got, thank you. You're an accountant. You know these things. You've got Texas Tech on the road. You got BYU on the road. You got Baylor on the road. You got Houston at home. You got Oklahoma State at home. Now, for being fair, we're being honest, and I'm not trying to count chickens before they hatch, all that kind of stuff, right? Oklahoma State, not a good team so far this year, right? So that's of the 5 games left. That's the most likely game you could potentially win. That means you've got to win 1 out of Baylor, Houston, Texas Tech, and BYU to get to that 6-win mark. Brian, how important, how likely do you think it is for UCF to do that? And do you buy my theory about, again, I could give a rip about what bowl it is, and if we're in the Military Bowl or the R&L Carriers Independence Bowl, I could care less. But you've got a standard that you set, which has a little bit of a synergy to year 1 of Scott Frost 1.0, where you got to bowl eligibility and you sort of maybe built a foundation for a program.
There's 2 things to unbox here. First one, got to find those 2 wins. I think Oklahoma State absolutely is a game that UCF needs to win. Whether it's for bowl eligibility or not, that is an opponent that is much like West Virginia, is going through a rough season, and you absolutely need to find a way to win that game if you're UCF. If you're going to, continue to pat yourself on the back and say that this team has all the fight in the world and, we're pushing and we're building something here, that's a must-win game, just like this West Virginia game was. I'm going to say, I've said it since preseason. I see us as a 5-7 team. Now, maybe I'm off by a game and we go 6-6. I think that's it. At this point, that's what you're looking at here, right? If everything plays out kind of the way most fans expect this to be, it's probably going to be a loss at BYU. That's a tough place to play in Provo. A loss at Texas Tech, who lost to Arizona State last night, but they're still a very, very good football team. Yep. Houston also looks to be a very good team this season. That is the space game, that is at home. So maybe there's a little bit of razzle-dazzle magic that we find and we're able to pull out a win at home during the space game. And then that leaves you at 6-6 if you're able to get that win over Oklahoma State and over Houston. That Houston game is going to be tough. So I think that that's really where, assuming that we lose at Baylor, that we lose at Texas Tech, and we lose at BYU to end the season, I think the season, whether or not we make bowl eligibility, is going to hinge on Houston. And again, I don't want to say anything before it happens. The games are played on the field, not on paper. Crazier things have happened. Maybe we go to Texas Tech and we walk away with a win. Great. That'd be perfect. I hope we do. But I think that we're looking at either 5-7 and 6-6. Now, obviously, I hope it is 6-6. I hope we get to a bowl, not because bowl season is anything special going into, which bowl game we're going to play in as a 6-6 team. But as George O'Leary used to say, it's those extra practices that this team is going to get with bowl eligibility and playing in a bowl game. And that is so important for Scott Frost and this coaching staff and a lot of these younger players who are still learning this offense, getting to know the defense, and gelling together. And whether it's the Cure Bowl in Orlando or the Boca Bowl and Boca, I don't care. I mean, I'll be happy if we make a bowl just because it's going to help launch this team into the 2026 season by getting them those extra practices. So it's not necessarily the bowl trophy that UCF could potentially win that's important. It's the foundation and the building blocks that comes along with those extra practices and the fact that the players will be excited, right? That's a reward for them to be able to go to a bowl game. That's why the bowl games are there, is for the players to enjoy themselves and get some fan involvement too. But those extra practices and all that, it's really the important part.
For context, Houston sitting at 5-1 right now.
5-1, yeah, I think so.
And Baylor, 6-1, and Baylor is at 4-3. So those are probably the two games that are of the 5 remaining. If you take Oklahoma State and say that feels like the one you have the most likely chance at winning, you look at the 2 Texas Tech, BYU, and say those are the toughest. Then you've got these 2 left, which means you basically got to win one of these 2. So you got to either beat a 4-3 Baylor at Baylor, or you've got to beat a now 6-1 Texas Tech, or Houston rather, at UCF. Their only loss is to Texas Tech. They play Arizona State, and then they play West Virginia before UCF. So a lot of stuff there, Brian. Let's talk a lot of talk before the game. You as you often do, you're big on the Twitter. You're big on the Twitter thumbs. And so pre-game, Brian, you, me, a couple of our closest knucklehead friends are standing up in the cabana. Yeah, that's right. I said standing. And we're enjoying the sights and sounds. And we look around, and I saw 2 things most predominantly, Brian: aluminum and West Virginia. There was a lot of empty seats and a lot of West Virginia fans. And for a while we were like, man, is this going to be like the lowest attended homecoming game ever? Is this going to be a West Virginia home game? And probably up until like 5 minutes before kickoff, that was still true. Now, late arriving UCF crowd, the stadium does fill in nicely. There was still some aluminum, what that would be, I guess, the north
end zone,
northeast corner of the end zone. Still some aluminum up there. A lot of West Virginia in the crowd, though. Luckily, they weren't a factor overall, Brian. So, again, you were out there early. You were like, what are we doing here? And now you've had a chance to sit in the stands. You had a chance to see the crowd. Does Brian Peterson want to offer any mea culpa here on the tweet that has heard him being now called names that are things that you would never want to hear anyone say about your friends?
No, I don't think so.
Perfect.
I mean, okay, and we're done.
Perfect.
Show's over. No.
Awesome.
So 2 things. One, the picture that I posted on Twitter was taken 5 minutes before kickoff, and I would say that the stadium had 25% capacity filled at that point. I mean, there was a lot of aluminum, a lot of empty seats. The students were there. They have to get there early because if they want a seat, they've got to wait in line and they got to get in there. But the rest of the stadium was fairly empty other than a lot of West Virginia fans. And I was worried about that coming into the game because the last time we hosted West Virginia in Orlando, their fans traveled extremely well. They were loud and rambunctious in 2023. So I expected the same from them in 2025. You and I were over at the Celeste before the game had started, and the West Virginia wasn't the alumni group was having their tailgate over there, and there was quite a few West Virginia fans.
By the way,
at their
central casting of what you would expect a gathering of that type. Everything you would expect that you would think from like a West Virginia alumni gathering. Check all the boxes. Everything was absolutely exactly as you'd picture.
Yeah, for a homecoming game, I was disappointed. That was the point. The tweet that I was posting was that 5 minutes before kickoff, as the team is about to run out the tunnel, it looked pretty darn empty in there. And yes, the stadium did fill in. I think by the end of the first quarter, the stadium did. We looked around and you and I said, okay, things have filled in pretty well here. And it did. It was loud. But for a homecoming game, come on, guys. Can we not get in the stadium before kickoff and be there to cheer on the team? Why did we have to slowly trickle in by the end of the first quarter? I don't know why that's a UCF thing. But it's always bothered me. So yeah, I was kind of baiting people in a way. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was going to get a lot of heat for that post that I put out there. And it did. It got a lot of cycle, but it's still not wrong, I don't think. I mean, I was in the stands. I'm ready to go. I was there pregame through the end of the fourth quarter. So, I mean, do what you will. It's, if you're a season ticket holder, if you're buying seats, they're yours to do with as you please, I guess. But why are you going to go to why buy tickets to the game if you're not going to go to the game? And I'm not going to get involved in all that student section. They leave early, blah, blah, blah. The students pay their fair share in student athletic fees. So that's a different story entirely. But man, if I'm a player and I'm looking around at, kickoff, it was empty. It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been an earlier arriving crowd, but I will say that. I know noon games are tough for people, right? Maybe there's some time stuff, kids, families, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. I agree with you. I hate policing how to be a fan, right? Everyone kind of fans differently. And so I will say this, though. It does, whether you're student section, your season ticket holder, whether you're cabana, whether you're tower, wherever you are, I always find it funny, like, you kind of lose the right to complain as a fan when you're sitting at home saying, why aren't there more students there, when you sold your tickets to the West Virginia guy who's now sitting in the cabana, right? Like, I feel like let's all just be intellectually honest about this. And you kind of lose a little bit of the right to complain about, like, well, everyone, why aren't you sitting in the cabana? And I'm like, well, I'm sitting next to the 2 tickets that you sold to the West Virginia guy. So like, I think all of our hands are dirty, is I guess what I'm saying here. No one's the perfect fan. We all have our sins. We all have our flaws in the way that we fan stuff. And so to sit around and point fingers and go, students need to be there early, and why aren't they sitting here? Why aren't they staying the whole game? Yes, all of that stuff optimally would be great if we all agreed to do it, but we're never going to all agree to do it. But that's where I think then none of us have the right to point finger at somebody else, because we're all just as guilty at whatever it is that we're doing than everybody else. So let's not point our fingers and say, well, shame on you students, and shame on you season ticket holder, and shame on you cabana people, and shame on you tower club. Like, everyone, there was a lot of West Virginia, Brian, and they were in premium sections, which means some people sold their tickets. Not begrudging that, but then to me, you kind of lose the ability to sit around and complain about certain things when we're all part of the problem, essentially.
And you and I are guilty for that too, right? We like to stand up in the top section of the cabana. I will admit, I have never sat in my seats. My seats in the cabana.
You don't know where your seats are. Yeah.
Couldn't even tell you where they are. Why? Because whenever I get there, I go straight up to the top. I stand right at the 50-yard, well, just about the 50-yard line, sometimes the 40-yard line.
30,
and I stand at the top.
40,
yeah. I mean, and you know what? That's what I choose to do. I'm there. I'm cheering. I'm making noise. I'm banging my hand on the metal that is the little counter that's there. And the cabana gets a bad rap, right? Everyone says it looks bad on TV because people don't sit in their seats. I apologize, because I'm one of those people. I'm up at the top. But it wasn't just the cabana yesterday. At kickoff, it was the whole stadium. And I saw a lot of people complaining about folks leaving early. And we've heard the same routine over and over again during the season. Enough with the night on night crime, guys. I posted the picture. It was empty. You can't debate it because the picture was empty. UCF got to win. That's the important thing. Let's all just move on to the next game, and let's have a good season.
A small tease here, I will tell you, there could be some news about the stadium coming up this week, so stay tuned for that, Brian. 2 other things I want to get to with you. Again, you and I were there, so I did not see this yet. I've seen a little bit so far on the TV. A lot of folks very excited about the way TNT presented the game. Pre-game show specific to UCF. There was obviously a 30-minute show prior to that, kind of behind the scenes at UCF, which was fine. I watched it. There was really nothing earth-shattering. It was cool to see UCF stuff there, by the way. Pre-game show dedicated, halftime show dedicated, post-game show. There was a sky cam that was there. Again, I did not hear most of the game, but JB Long and Mike Golick Jr., who were announcing the game, a lot of fans very complimentary of their knowledge of UCF. I can tell you specifically, I can give you some insight now, Brian. I'll share the inside scoop with you.
Drop it on me.
JB Long, who called the game for TNT, he actually reached out to me earlier in the week and was kind of like, hey, I'm calling the game. I want to learn as much as I can about UCF. And so I know he was following some of our stuff. He was looking at the reports that Trace and Nick and Cherico were putting together. A couple questions that he lobbed my way about some stuff too. So he was absolutely doing his research all week long. And I suspect if he reached out to me, he probably contacted some other UCF folks who do content as well. So I think from what I could hear, it sounded like that came across in the broadcast, that he was prepared. He kind of knew his stuff. Golick Jr. seemed to get some good marks as well, Brian. Again, I didn't see it yet, but I do want to at least acknowledge and tip the cap. It seemed like a lot of folks were happy at the way TNT presented the game, which is funny because before the season, we're like, TNT? We're on what? TNT this week, 1 o'clock TNT. What's that like? And I think a lot of folks walked away being like, man, that was a really good presentation and a good afternoon for UCF because A, you win, but B, TNT showcased UCF UCF in a way that we haven't seen a lot of network showcase UCF since that 2017-18 season.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that up because the TNT did get a lot of praise from Knights fans on social media about how well the presentation was done from a football standpoint. That, like you said, we had the sky cam out there. I mean, we haven't had a sky cam in the stadium since 2018. I think that was the
maybe
game
Stanford.
day.
Maybe Stanford 2019.
Did they have it for Stanford? That
would be the only other
It's
game
been a
that I would
while.
tell you.
It's been
Yes.
a few years since we've had a sky cam up there, and I forgot how much fun the sky cam is to look. When you look back at the highlights and the sky cam is out there. I haven't watched the game in its entirety because, like you said, you and I were both there, so I've just seen the highlights that UCF has put out. But everybody has said, TNT have just put on a great production. They would like to see more Big 12 games aired by TNT just because of the quality of the product that we were seeing both on the field and during halftime pregame. JB Long, as you said, he posted earlier today that he was going to go back to Lazy Moon, even if they're not calling a game in Orlando. So, they were doing their research. Absolutely. They know the hot spots and the points to talk about. TNT also, going back to Jaden Nixon, he was the last person on the field because they were interviewing him post game. I mean, they had interview questions lined up for Jaden Nixon, the performance that he had put on the field, and they were interviewing him after halftime or after the game, excuse me. So I thought that from what I've seen so far, I was really impressed with the TNT production. And I mean, the 1 o'clock game, I know Knights fans prefer a later game. I also prefer a later game myself, but 1 o'clock better than an ESPN noon kickoff, I guess. You get that extra hour to tailgate or so on and so forth. But I thought it was great. Yeah.
Now ask Knight fans, would you rather been on, noon ESPN Plus or 1 p.m. on TNT, knowing now what they do? And JB told me in our exchanges that, I mean, again, schedule I don't think is fully baked yet. I think there's a possibility they come back to UCF at some other point this year. So he was kind of like, hey, we'll see if I get another Knights game this year. But it seemed like him and Golick had a good time. JB Long, by the way, crazy person, left immediately after that game, took a red eye to London, where he also calls the Rams for the NFL.
Oh my gosh.
Left immediately after UCF, went to London to call the Rams game that was airing at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time this morning on a Sunday. So JB Long getting those frequent flyer miles, Brian. And last but not least, another topic for Sons today, nothing that has anything to do with UCF, but breaking on Sunday afternoon, the long-awaited tenure of Billy Napier comes to an end, Brian. Probably the worst kept secret in all of college sports is that Billy Napier was probably going to be looking for work as this Sunday afternoon rolled on. Your initial thoughts, obviously, you're not a Gator guy. You don't follow the Gators. I get all that too, but just a new opening in the state of Florida, what this means for UCF. Is there a tie to UCF? Mike Norvell, by the way, FSU loses in spectacular fashion to Stanford. Let me repeat that. FSU loses to Stanford. And so
ACC after dark.
ACC powerhouse Stanford there. So some upheaval maybe in the state of Florida, Brian, as a Knights fan. How do you think this plays out? FAU didn't play well. The Cows obviously are still ranked at this point in time. I don't even know if FIU played this weekend, so not up to date on that. But you kind of see where things are kind of funneling in the state of Florida. How you feel about where UCF is at now relative to what you've seen from both Florida now without Napier and Florida State with whatever the hell happens with Novell?
In the short term, I feel pretty good for UCF. I mean, obviously it was announced today that UF is letting their head coach go. So after 4 seasons in Gainesville, he's out of there, which means that the players that are on the Florida Gators team now have some eligibility in the transfer portal. So as the coach is gone, they're going to have some eligibility to come out and perhaps transfer to other programs. Perhaps Scott Frost and his coaching staff see something that over there up in Gainesville that they want to try and pluck down to Orlando. So that's a huge opportunity for UCF perhaps to pick up some transfer. That's the short term. In the long term, who knows what's going to happen? Obviously, as a UCF fan, I wanted them to keep him in Gainesville, sign him for another year, keep him on. He's doing a great, mediocre job in Gainesville. So obviously, Florida is one of those blue blood programs in college football, and they'll find their way back to prominence.
Is it?
Yeah,
it's
an
still?
SEC program.
Sure.
They've won national championships in this century, right?
Yeah, who hasn't?
Yeah.
I just wonder. It's interesting. They've been through a bit of since the Urban Meyer days, they've been through a little bit of some turbulence. I just wonder where they slot. But continue, sorry.
The other question is, how long does Mike Norvell last in Tallahassee? I think that he's probably got just a slight bit longer leash just because they had that undefeated season not too long ago. And I think that the Florida State athletics department doesn't want to pay the
And
millions upon millions of dollars to get him out of there.
Another one. His buyout is almost
3.
triple what Billy Napier's
Yes.
is. I think Napier's like 21 mil.
20.
I think Norvell is like 54, 58, somewhere in there. So it's almost triple to get rid of Mike Norvell.
Yeah. And they haven't done as poorly as Billy Napier has in Gainesville. So I don't know. I mean, it all comes down to timing, and this is why I'm not an AD, right? I don't know what the coaching search carousel looks like, especially now that there's that void to fill in Gainesville. I would imagine that that's going to be a job that a lot of people are interested in. I don't know how much of a, not to use a term from UCF, but a pressure cooker it is in Gainesville if you're the head coach there. Obviously, they expect quite a bit out of that program. So I don't know who they're going to be looking. I mean, I know that the Lane Kiffin name was thrown out there as a potential to Gainesville. The last I heard was that the rumor was that they were working on a contract extension for Lane Kiffin in Oxford, Mississippi. So I don't know if that's happened yet or not. Somebody had reported at one point, I think it was last week or the week before, that there was a private jet that was chartered from Mississippi to Gainesville. So perhaps that, there's some smoke on that front. I don't know. Curious to see who they find to fill that role. But I think that in the short term, like I said, I think that there's an opportunity for UCF to perhaps grab some O-line players that, we could get from an SEC school that maybe, has lost their coach now and is looking to kind of explore other schools where they can get some playing time.
Yeah, I'm of the thought that the more chaos, the better for UCF, because again, let's just play the math you're playing right now, and we have no idea if it's true, but just for argument's sake, let's assume Lane Kiffin goes to Florida, right? Now the players at Ole Miss are now looking for, well, hey, who's my next coach? What am I going to do, right? Let's say Ole Miss hires John Summerall from Tulane, right? Now the players from Tulane are like, hey, what are we doing, right? I think the more upheaval you have, there's going to be players who are going to pop free that are looking for places to play, looking to go someplace else. As we know, a ton of talent comes from Florida, so you want to maybe get back to the state. You don't know what's going on at Florida, what their coach is going to be. You don't know what's going on with Norvell, but now here's Scott Frost going, hey, like here we are. It's almost like UCF maybe did themselves a favor because they were a year ahead of all this chaos. There wasn't a lot of turnover last year at the Power 4 level. I think it was West Virginia, UCF, North Carolina, Purdue, I think, were the only 4 schools that had turnover at the head coaching level last year. And so UCF falls to the bottom of the ladder at that point, right? Because now you're the most unstable of that. But all of a sudden now, I think I saw Colorado State's coach, which again isn't Power 4, but he got fired earlier today as well. So you see more and more opening. Now UCF, all of a sudden, the stability meter, Scott Frost can be like, hey, I'm here. I'm back. I've got a long-term contract. I just went 6-6, hopefully, and I got a bowl win. I'm building something special here, right? So I think the more chaos, the better. You now have a chance to maybe look around and figure out there are going to be players and coaches, by the way, who may be looking for that next opportunity. And maybe this is where UCF can sell some stability, sell a 6-6, sell that we're doing better. Now, let's be honest. They're not going to get the 4-star, 5-star kid unless you're going to pay for that. And I don't think that's UCF. I don't think they're going to go pay for.
We don't have the money for that.
Florida's best offensive lineman if they get in the portal. But there's going to be a trickle-down effect. And at some point, you're going to get to that layer of really talented 3-star players, perhaps, and that's where UCF goes and plays money ball again. And now, do you have the ability to get some guys? So, to me, my mindset, more chaos, the better. It just makes things more complex. And my hope is that UCF can be, hey, we're over here. We're settled now. We had our chaos year. We're better. We have this whole thing working here. Come play over here. My hope is that can play in UCF's favor.
And I think that it will eventually, right? You brought up the point that a lot of the talent at other schools come from the state of Florida. And to his credit, Gus mentioned that for several years when he was the head coach at UCF, was that, look, we're going to go after some of these guys that we don't necessarily think we can get out the gate, right? Maybe not right out of high school, but we're going to go make the relationships with some of these players, because when they decide to enter the transfer portal later on, so when, Lane leaves Ole Miss and this player had come from the state of Florida and had gone to play for Ole Miss, and their coach leaves, now they're looking, hey, you know what? I want to get back to Florida. I want to come back home. And we've already built those relationships. So that's where, and I know a lot of people aren't big on recruiting just because it's such a hot mess with the transfer portal and who's going to sign and who's committed. But these coaches are following a lot of these players and building those relationships now, because they know that it's going to pay off in the future. And you're going to find perhaps a player or two that's unhappy playing at an ACC school where they're having to go and play Stanford, on a 10 o'clock broadcast on ESPN,
in front of dozens of
fans. Those relationships are important. Going back to our point about the stadium, I guess I can't complain about stadium capacity. If you saw that Stanford game, that stadium was completely empty. So maybe we should be counting our blessings at this point. But I think that the chaos is good. It's good for UCF, certainly in the short term, and depending on who these other programs bring in as their head coach. I mean, it could be you could wind up with another Mike Norvell. They're talking about interim head coach Gus Malzahn in Tallahassee, and we've seen that playbook a couple times now. So
that's interesting.
Chaos is good.
I do think that's another interesting wrinkle in the Norvell stuff, right? Is you can think Gus of whatever you want of Gus and his performance at UCF, and I think we all agree it wasn't good, by the way. But he did a good. You said this earlier. He did a good job of at least getting some big names to think about UCF, to consider UCF to be in that short list. And then when he went to Florida State, you saw him take a few. Like how good would a Randy Pittman Jr. feel right now in this offense, or how good would Adrian Medley be at offensive guard, right? Like he took some guys that we were like, man, like that would have been a good piece for UCF, right? If Gus isn't at Florida State anymore, now you don't have that angle that you have to kind of combat against either. Gus did a good job of cultivating some relationships and getting some connections, right? Now you've got a Javon Boggs who's at Florida State who flipped from UCF late to follow Gus there. Gus is gone. Does he go, wait a minute, like I'm from Cocoa. Maybe I want to just drive down the road.
Close to the family, yeah.
Who knows, right? Somebody else could offer him a bag of money and, UCF who, right? But I just think the chaos that is around, could potentially help out UCF in the long term, Brian. But for all that, we'll figure that out down the road. Right now, we've got a victory Monday for the Knights. It's been a while since we've had that. Again, first Big 12 conference win this season, 45-13 over West Virginia. Vibes are good. It's a bye week for the Knights. It's a good get right week. Get healthy, get hydrated, put your feet up, do whatever it is that you do, and get some things back in order before they head back to the field, if you will, and head out to Waco. So we'll see, Brian. It feels good. I don't know what it means just yet. There's some ups and downs here, but let's take the win when we got one. The Knights are now 4-3, and they'll look to get back on the field against Baylor here in a couple of weeks. But we'll keep everything covered. It's a bye week around here, so there's no press availabilities all week long. So no Scott Frost Mondays to tell me that he doesn't know who the quarterback is yet. No Steve Cooper Tuesdays. No Alehouse Frost on Wednesdays. So all that stuff's not on tap this week. There's some basketball this week, Brian? I know we don't do basketball a ton around here. UCF going to Duke for an exhibition match. Johnny Dawkins going home. I think that's on the ACC network again. Exhibition match. So you get to learn along the rest of us who the hell's on the team and figure it out. We have some videos. We actually had some interviews we'll drop this week so we can introduce you to some of the players out there. I still have to figure out who they are so I can title them appropriately, but we got to figure all that out, Brian. But it should be a fun week around here, around Night Nation. So appreciate you tuning into this. Again, subscribe, rate, review, unsubscribe, resubscribe, do all that stuff you got to do. We really appreciate it. And before we close, a happy belated birthday to Brian Peterson here, who celebrated his birthday here on the game day Saturday. So he got a win in life because he's now a year older, perhaps, and a win on the field. There was some gold in the stands. I think it was.
There were some gold in the stands. Yeah. I was wearing a gold jersey. I was wearing my.
You got a ton of compliments. You got a ton.
2005 era, Lance logo gold Adidas jersey, and I got several shout outs from just random people that I didn't know.
The Stephen Moffitt throwback hit hard.
It was the Stephen Moffitt throwback,
Saturday. But a belated happy birthday to Brian Peterson. Hope it was a great one, buddy, and we appreciate all you do around there. That's a screaming Peterson in the background. Which means it's time for us to get out of here. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you all soon. Good nights.
Charge on.